Cześć i witaj a Kelsey-Bear's Cozy Fairs. Recently, I had gone to the Polish festival with my family, and while I was there, I was so inspired by some of the beautiful traditional Polish outfits. So I figured, with fall right around the corner, Halloween's upon us, I would go ahead and make my own. To get some ideas, I went to the internet and did some research. I pulled up photos of Polish folk outfits that I really liked and that I would use as my inspiration. Based on the photos I collected, I ultimately decided that I'd be sewing 4 articles of clothing to make my outfit. And in this video, I'm going to be taking you along with me as I sew a blouse, a vest, a skirt, and an apron to make my very own Polish folk outfit. So, grab your cup of tea and let's get to it. The first article of clothing that I decided to start with was the underblouse. Based on all of the photos that I found on the internet, the underblouse would go under the vest and it could be long or short sleeve. I decided to go for a long sleeve just because it gets pretty cold in October here in the Midwest. But the blouse tended to be very simple, looks like cotton. Sometimes it would have a collar on the blouse. Sometimes there would be a little bit of ruffle to the sleeves. Since I found some variation, I decided to use a pattern that I've used before that I could easily adapt to work for this project. The pattern itself is a really simple tie neck blouse that I found on Etsy. I've used this pattern in the past actually to make a few dresses. My previous video that you can find on my channel actually is a dress made with this pattern. I added an elastic waistband and a skirt, so funnily enough, this is the first time I'm using the pattern as intended for a blouse, and the only modification I've made this time around is that I'm making it long sleeve. I am really thankful that I decided to start this project sooner rather than later, because around this point in sewing, I started to feel that I was coming down with something and my husband was getting really sick too. So I took a short break. I started making a lot of immune boosting teas. Shout out to my parents. Right around this time, they gave us a bunch of elderberry tea. And I began making huge batches and I was just chugging this as I was sewing. If you look closely here, you can see that I had to unpick some threads higher up in my sleeve, and thankfully this was the only mistake that I had made in the process of creating this blouse. I had decided to place my ruffle cuff way too high up on the sleeve, so the sleeve ended up being too short. Thankfully, I unpicked it, I made a shorter cuff, and the sleeve fit great. It was a small mistake, but I figured I would share that and talk about that a bit because it just doesn't seem to matter how confident you get at sewing. Sometimes we just make silly mistakes and that's okay. Usually we can find a way to make a garment work for us. And with all of that said and done, all I had left was to hem my shirt, add my tag, and I was finished with the first part of my project. Part 2 of this project was the vest, and since I didn't already have some patterns on hand that I could use or modify for this project, I went to the internet, and on Etsy I found this lovely simple vest sewing pattern that was absolutely perfect for what I was thinking of. If you look at a lot of traditional Polish folk vests, they tend to have this absolutely stunning floral embroidery. Now the problem is, I was only a few weeks out from a costume party and knew I would have no time to do any of that stunning embroidery by hand. So I figured my best bet would be to see if I could find some folk style iron-on patches instead. At this point in time, I found myself in a little bit of a situation, which is that the cold that I thought I was coming down with actually turned out to be the flu. When I tell you I felt rough, that is the understatement of the century. To be completely honest, I don't even remember sewing the vest all that much because I was so sick. It actually ended up working out okay because although that these were iron-on patches, I wanted to make sure that they stayed on and were really secure. So I spent most of the day on the couch sewing these patches on by hand. When I was looking for iron-on patches online in stores, I couldn't for the life of me seem to find any iron-on floral patches that came directly from Poland. But the cool thing is that I actually found some from Ukraine. I'm Polish from my father's side of the family, and very recently he was telling me about how some of our genealogy traces back to what used to be parts of southeastern Poland that are now modern-day Ukraine. So I thought that getting these patches was actually kind of fitting in a way to just honor that part of my family history, as well as honoring the very special relationship between Poland and Ukraine right now. The whole point of this sewing project really is to connect with and celebrate my Polish heritage. I am half Polish, and growing up, I was always so excited for an opportunity to participate in any of the little customs and traditions my family would do as a way to help us connect with our roots. I think that having that sense of connection to a specific culture helps so many people, myself included, feel really grounded. It helps us feel as if we're part of something bigger than ourselves. It can even give us a sense of purpose and confidence and a sense of belonging. Part 3 of this project was the skirt, and I wasn't 100% sure what style skirt that women used to wear back in the day, but I ultimately decided to go for a very simple circle skirt. I like how voluminous a circle skirt looks, and I decided to cut out an extra large one, create an elastic waistband so that I could just step into it. It was easy to get into and would always be comfortable. The fabric itself is shipped from Poland, so I was especially excited about the fabric for this part of my project. Thankfully, I had thought ahead and ordered the fabric really early on because it took about a month to arrive in the mail. But once I held the fabric in my hands, I thought it was well worth the wait. Last but not least, part 4 of this project was the apron. And when it comes to traditional Polish aprons, I did have a few options that I could go with, but I ultimately decided that the plain white apron would be a really nice way to tie together the white of my blouse. When it comes to the actual creation of the apron, I decided to keep it really simple. I just used some cotton fabric, cut out 2 rectangles, right sides together. I had a little bit of lace trim, and then I just made a waistband. It was super simple, super easy. The one downside to having a white apron is that I almost immediately got chocolate on it the first time I wore it. I very quickly learned that when I was handling any food or doing any sort of task that had a mess, I needed to take my apron off instead of putting it on. Which is a little backwards, but hey, I was happy with the end result.